Humanity had waited for this moment for years. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from hundreds of alien civilizations. Their ships floated above the massive station, shining like distant stars. The air was heavy with tension as Earth's ambassadors stood before the council, ready to speak. Ambassador Julian Carter, a man known for his sharp mind and calm demeanor, took a step forward. His voice was steady as he addressed the council. "Humanity is ready to join the galactic community," he said. "We have worked hard to build a future among the stars. We seek peace, cooperation, and progress." The hall remained silent. The alien leaders, seated in high chairs of glowing metal, watched him without expression. Then, a deep, echoing voice filled the chamber. It belonged to High Chancellor Vornak, a towering reptilian being with golden scales. He stood and looked down at the humans with cold, unreadable eyes. "Humans," Vornak said slowly, "you are a dangerous species." His words sent a ripple of whispers through the crowd. "Your history is filled with war, destruction, and ambition. You expand too quickly. You create weapons too powerful. You do not know your place." Julian felt a chill run through him. He had expected some resistance, but not this. He kept his expression neutral. "With respect, Chancellor, every species has a history of struggle. We have learned from our past. We seek unity, not war." Vornak's eyes narrowed. "Unity?" His voice dripped with disbelief. "We have studied your kind. Less than a century ago, you fought wars that nearly wiped out your own planet. And now you build warships, engines of destruction, in the name of progress." He leaned forward, his golden scales reflecting the dim lights of the chamber. "We will not allow it." The words hit like a thunderstrike. The humans exchanged glances. Julian's heart pounded in his chest. "You will not allow what?" he asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "You are hereby banned from further technological advancement," Vornak declared. His voice was cold and final. "You will dismantle all space fleets beyond your home system. You will shut down your weapons programs. You will not develop new warships, new defenses, or any technology that threatens the balance of this galaxy." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Julian struggled to keep his voice calm. "This is unfair. We have the right to grow, to protect ourselves. We have done nothing to deserve this punishment." Vornak's gaze was unshaken. "It is not a punishment," he said. "It is a precaution. If humanity refuses, Earth will face consequences beyond your imagination." The meaning was clear. If Earth resisted, they would be crushed. The Galactic Council had the power to enforce this ban, and humanity was not strong enough to fight them. The ambassadors felt the weight of an entire planet on their shoulders. The meeting ended with cold silence. The humans left the chamber under the watchful eyes of alien guards. No handshakes, no farewells, just quiet judgment. Back on their ship, Julian sat in the command room with his team. The screen showed news from Earth, people cheering, expecting good news. They did not yet know the truth. Commander Elias Voss, a tall man with sharp features and the hardened look of a soldier, broke the silence. "They fear us," he said. His voice was calm, but filled with an edge of anger. "They fear what we might become." Julian sighed, rubbing his temples. "And now they've chained us." Elias leaned forward, his eyes burning with determination. "Not if we break the chains." Julian looked at him, startled. "Are you suggesting we disobey the council?" Elias's expression did not change. "I'm saying we do what humanity has always done. We survive. We adapt. And when the time comes, we fight." The room fell silent. The weight of his words sank in. It was a dangerous path, but deep down, they all knew the truth. The aliens had banned humanity's rise. But humanity was not the kind to stay on its knees. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, hidden from prying eyes, a secret project was about to begin. The Galactic Council had made its decision clear. Humanity was forbidden from advancing any further. But there were those who refused to accept this fate. Commander Elias Voss stood in the dimly lit command center, staring at a holographic display of the vast underground facility. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers moved through the tunnels like ghosts, working in silence. The project was dangerous. If the Council discovered what they were building, Earth would face annihilation. But Elias had no doubt. This was the only way forward. Julian Carter entered the room, his expression tight with worry. "Do you realize what we're doing?" he asked. His voice was low, cautious. "If they find out." "They won't," Elias interrupted. His tone was firm. "We've erased all records, hidden our movements. The Council thinks they've crippled us. That's their mistake." Julian exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. He had spent years as a diplomat, trying to secure humanity's place among the stars. But diplomacy had failed. Now, only action remained. "You really believe we can build a warship powerful enough to stand against them?" Elias turned to the massive screen in front of them. A blueprint flickered into view, a design unlike anything humanity had ever created. The ship was massive, its armor plated with advanced alloys, its weapons capable of piercing the shields of even the most powerful alien battleships. This was not just another vessel. This was a symbol of defiance. "We don't just need a warship," Elias said, his eyes locked onto the design. "We need a message. We need to show them that we won't be controlled." The project was codenamed Titan's Wrath. It would be humanity's greatest achievement or its final mistake. In the tunnels below, teams of engineers worked in near darkness, their tools humming as they welded, programmed, and constructed the framework of the ship. Every piece had to be smuggled in secret, every part assembled without detection. Drones patrolled the surface of Mars, ensuring that no alien scout ships got too close. But even with the best security, the risk was immense. The Galactic Council had spies everywhere. They had satellites monitoring every human colony. If even a whisper of the project reached the wrong ears, everything would be over. Dr. Lillian Hayes, the lead scientist of the project, stood in front of a group of researchers, her face lit by the glow of data screens. "We're pushing the limits of what's possible," she said. "The Council has technology far beyond ours. We need to think faster, build stronger, innovate beyond anything they've ever seen." A young engineer raised his hand. "But how do we build a ship that can stand against an entire fleet? They have thousands of warships. We have one." Dr. Hayes smiled slightly. "We don't need to match their numbers. We need to outthink them. We need something they won't expect." The answer lay in humanity's greatest strength, its unpredictability. The Council followed strict rules of warfare, ancient traditions that dictated how battles were fought. Humanity had no such restrictions. Elias stepped forward. "This ship won't just fight. It will change the way war is waged. We will strike from where they least expect. We will use tactics they don't understand. And when the time comes, we will show them that we are not to be underestimated." The engineers exchanged glances. Fear still lingered in their eyes, but beneath it, something else began to take hold: determination. Days turned into weeks. The skeleton of the Titan's Wrath grew larger in the underground docks. The ship's engines, reverse-engineered from stolen alien technology, hummed softly as they underwent their first tests. Shield generators, far more advanced than anything Earth had ever built, flickered to life. But there was one major problem. They needed weapons. The Galactic Council had strictly controlled the development of human weaponry, forcing Earth to rely on outdated ballistic missiles and railguns. These would be useless against the energy-based defenses of alien warships. Julian stood with Dr. Hayes in the weapons lab, staring at a prototype of a new kind of weapon. "This is untested," he said. "We don't even know if it will work." Dr. Hayes adjusted her glasses, a hint of excitement in her voice. "That's the beauty of it. The Council has never seen anything like this before. If it works, it will tear through their ships like paper." The weapon was a new form of plasma accelerator, designed to bypass energy shields and strike directly at the hull of enemy vessels. If successful, it would give humanity a fighting chance. But time was running out. The Galactic Council was growing suspicious. Patrol ships had been spotted closer to Mars. They were searching for something. Elias stood in the command center, watching the surveillance feeds. His jaw tightened. "They know something is happening," he said. "We need to move faster." A message arrived from Earth, a warning. The Council had sent a small scout fleet toward the Sol system. If they found the hidden base, the war would be over before it even began. Elias turned to his team. "We have no choice," he said. "We fight now, or we lose everything." The Titan's wrath was not ready, but they had no time left. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The halls of the underground base were filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the steady hum of machinery and the occasional burst of sparks from welding torches. Engineers and scientists moved with purpose, their faces marked with exhaustion and determination. The Titan's wrath was no longer just an idea. It was real. Its massive hull stretched across the secret dock, armored plates gleaming under artificial lights. This ship was a miracle of stolen technology, human ingenuity, and sheer defiance. But it was not finished, and time was slipping away. Elias Voss stood at the edge of the observation deck, his hands gripping the railing as he watched the workers below. Every second counted. The Galactic Council's scout ships had been spotted closer than ever. If they discovered the project, it would mean total destruction. Julian Carter joined him, his expression tense. "We're moving as fast as we can," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we're not ready. The weapons system is still incomplete, and the stealth shielding is untested." Elias didn't look away from the ship. "Then we test it now." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "If we activate the stealth field too soon, it could overload the core. If we rush the weapons, they might not fire at all. We need more time." Elias turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "Time is the one thing we don't have." Down in the main control center, Dr. Lillian Hayes was surrounded by holographic screens, running calculations at impossible speeds. Numbers and data flickered before her, mapping out every possible failure, every possible success. She barely noticed when a young technician approached, his face pale with fear. "Dr. Hayes," he stammered, "there's a problem." Her fingers froze over the controls. "What kind of problem?" The technician swallowed hard. "The fuel cells for the ship's main reactor. They aren't stable. We calculated the output based on previous models, but Titan's wrath is too advanced. If we don't adjust the energy flow, the reactor could shut down mid-flight, or worse." Dr. Hayes clenched her jaw. A power failure in the middle of battle would mean certain death. The ship would be nothing more than a floating coffin. "Find a solution," she ordered, "whatever it takes." The technician hesitated. "We could use the alien cores." Silence fell over the room. Everyone knew what he meant. Hidden in the deepest levels of the base were stolen alien power cores, taken from wreckage and smuggled from black market traders. They were unpredictable, dangerous, but they could give Titan's wrath the power it needed. Dr. Hayes exhaled slowly. "Do it." Deep in the engineering bay, massive machines whirred as workers carefully installed the alien cores into the reactor housing. It was a risk, but there was no other choice. Titan's wrath would be powered by the very technology the Galactic Council had forbidden them from using. Meanwhile, in the weapons lab, a different battle was being fought. The plasma accelerator, humanity's last hope for piercing alien shields, was still unfinished. Dr. Hayes arrived, her eyes scanning the half-assembled weapon system. The scientists looked up as she entered, waiting for orders. "We need this online now," she said. "How close are we?" One of the lead engineers shook his head. "The energy output is unstable. If we fire too soon, the weapon could explode inside the ship." Dr. Hayes studied the schematics. "What if we reconfigure the cooling systems, channel the heat into secondary vents?" The engineer hesitated. That might work, but it would put extra strain on the main hull. Elias' voice cut through the conversation. Do it. This ship isn't meant to last for decades. It just needs to last long enough to win. The engineers nodded and got to work, their hands moving quickly over consoles, making adjustments that could mean the difference between victory and disaster. As the final systems were coming together, alarms blared throughout the base. Red lights flashed, and the deep, urgent voice of the AI control system echoed through the facility. Proximity alert. Unidentified ships entering the sector. Elias' blood ran cold. He rushed to the control center, Julian right behind him. Screens displayed the feed from hidden satellites. A fleet of alien ships had arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Julian's voice was tight. They found us. Elias turned to the crew. How long until Titan's Wrath is combat ready? A technician swallowed hard. Hours, maybe less. But we still haven't run full tests. The shields. Elias cut him off. We don't have time for tests. He pressed the emergency command button. All hands, prepare for launch. Julian looked at him, shock in his eyes. You can't be serious. We're not ready. Elias didn't blink. We either launch now or wait for them to destroy us in our own home. Down in the launch bay, engineers and soldiers moved frantically, securing systems, running last-minute diagnostics. The massive ship groaned as its engines powered up for the first time. Sparks rained from control panels as last-minute repairs were made. Dr. Hayes stared at the reactor core's readouts, sweat dripping from her forehead. The alien cores were holding, for now. Titan's Wrath was coming to life. The enemy ships were getting closer. Alien transmissions flooded human communication channels, demanding surrender. The Council wasn't sending just scouts anymore. They had sent executioners. Elias stood at the command console of the ship, his voice calm but firm. Bring the weapons online, charge the plasma accelerator, and open the launch doors. The underground ceiling trembled as massive steel doors slowly opened. Beyond them, the blackness of space stretched endlessly. Titan's Wrath began to rise, its engines roaring, shaking the very ground beneath it. Julian took a deep breath. Once we do this, there's no turning back. Elias gave a small, grim smile. There was never any turning back. The ship surged forward, breaking free from Mars' surface, entering the void. Ahead of them, the alien fleet was waiting. The first battle for humanity's future had begun. The blackness of space stretched endlessly before them, broken only by the distant glow of stars and the cold, metallic sheen of the enemy fleet. Titan's Wrath surged forward, its engines burning bright against the void. The ship was a miracle, a defiance against the Galactic Council's decree. But now, that defiance was about to be tested. Elias Voss stood on the command deck, gripping the metal railing as the alien fleet came into view. The enemy ships hovered in perfect formation, their sleek, silver hulls reflecting the distant light. There were 5 of them. Scout-class vessels, smaller than Titan's Wrath, but armed with advanced energy weapons and reinforced shields. These were not warships, not yet, but they were enough to destroy an unfinished prototype. Julian Carter stood beside him, his face tight with tension. They're hailing us. Elias exhaled. He had expected this. Put them on. The main screen flickered to life, and the image of auxiliary captain appeared. His deep-set eyes glowed with an unnatural blue hue, and his mouth twisted into a sharp, thin line. The auxiliary were one of the Galactic Council's enforcers, known for their ruthlessness. Humans, the auxiliary captain said, his voice smooth but edged with menace. You are in violation of the Galactic Council's decree. Surrender your vessel immediately and prepare for boarding. Elias met the alien's gaze without flinching. This is our space. We do not recognize your authority here. The auxiliary's expression didn't change. You misunderstand your position. The Council does not ask twice. Julian leaned in. If we stall, we might be able to. The enemy captain gave a simple hand signal. The first energy blast struck Titan's Wrath. A second later, the ship rocked violently as the shields flared against the impact. Warning sirens screamed through the command deck, and the lights flickered. Dr. Lillian Hayes, monitoring the reactor from below, called up through the comms. "Shields holding, but they won't last forever. We need to return fire." Elias didn't hesitate. "Fire plasma accelerator." On the lower decks, gunners locked onto the Lid-Silari ship. The plasma accelerator, still untested, hummed as energy built up inside its core. The moment stretched. Then, with a deafening roar, a bolt of supercharged plasma erupted from the ship's forward cannons, slicing through space like a comet. The alien vessel tried to evade, but it was too late. The plasma tore through its shields as if they were paper, striking the hull and detonating in a brilliant explosion. Debris scattered in all directions, and for the first time, the Silari formation wavered. The enemy had underestimated them. Elias clenched his fists. All weapons, fire at will. Titan's Wrath unleashed its full arsenal. Pulse cannons, railguns, and missile launchers fired in unison. The enemy ships retaliated, filling the void with beams of deadly energy. In the weapons bay, engineers scrambled to keep the plasma accelerator from overheating. Dr. Hayes barked orders, her fingers moving frantically across the controls. "If this thing overloads, it'll take the whole ship with it." The second plasma shot was ready. It fired straight into another enemy vessel, cutting through its engines. The ship went dark, spiraling out of control before colliding with a nearby asteroid. The remaining 3 auxiliary ships adjusted their strategy. Instead of direct fire, they shifted into high-speed maneuvers, darting around Titan's Wrath and bombarding it from multiple angles. The shields flickered dangerously. Julian gritted his teeth. "We can't take much more of this." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Then we changed the rules." Titan's Wrath suddenly powered down its forward thrusters, throwing off the enemy's targeting systems. The ship rotated rapidly, spinning on its axis. For a brief moment, all its rear weapons faced the auxiliary fleet. "Fire everything." The railguns tore through one of the enemy ships, rupturing its core in a chain reaction of explosions. The last 2 ships hesitated. Their prey was not behaving like they had expected. That was the moment Titan's Wrath struck the killing blow. A final plasma charge launched from the main cannon, hitting the nearest enemy ship dead center. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through space. The last Silari vessel, realizing it was alone, turned and fled. Silence fell over the command deck. The battle was over. Julian exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. "We actually did it." Elias' expression remained hard. That was just the first wave. The Council will send more. Dr. Hayes' voice came through the comms, urgent. "The reactor is unstable. We need to make repairs before the next fight." Elias nodded. "We'll fix what we can, but we're not running." Julian frowned. "Then what's the plan?" Elias looked out at the wreckage of the auxiliary ships. "The Council thinks they can control us with fear. They think we'll submit." His eyes darkened. "It's time to show them what humanity does when pushed against the wall." Titan's Wrath turned its engines toward deep space. The battle was won. But the real war was just beginning. The silence after the battle was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of Titan's Wrath's failing systems. Smoke curled from shattered consoles, and sparks rained down as overworked circuits struggled to keep up. The ship had survived, but it was battered. The first engagement had proven that humanity could fight back, but it also proved they were not ready for what was coming next. Elias Voss stood in the command center, his gaze locked onto the holographic projections of the destroyed auxiliary ships. They had fought well, but that was a mere scouting force. The Galactic Council would not ignore this defiance. No, the next fleet would not come to negotiate. It would come to destroy. Julian Carter wiped sweat from his brow. shaking his head as he studied the damage reports. Hull integrity is at 60%. Shields are barely holding together. The plasma accelerator is offline until we can reinforce the conduits. We need time to repair. Elias clenched his jaw. We don't have time. Dr. Lillian Hayes' voice crackled through the comms from the engineering bay. That last fight nearly overloaded the reactor. We're running on borrowed time here, Elias. If we push this ship any harder without fixing the power grid, we'll tear ourselves apart before the enemy even arrives. Elias didn't answer immediately. He knew she was right. But there was no safe harbor, no hidden dock where they could disappear and rebuild. The Council controlled nearly every habitable system. Humanity had been forced underground for so long that their allies, if they even had any, would be too afraid to stand against the ruling power. Julian glanced at him. You have a plan, don't you? Elias exhaled. We can't outrun them. And we can't outgun them. Not yet. He turned toward the tactical display, zooming in on a single point in space. But there's one place where we might stand a chance. Julian frowned. That's deep in the Veil Nebula. There's nothing there. Dr. Hayes' voice cut in. Not nothing. There's wreckage, ancient battle debris from wars long before humanity ever reached the stars. Elias nodded. And somewhere in that wreckage is exactly what we need. The Veil Nebula was a graveyard of forgotten battles, a place where old warships from a dozen extinct civilizations drifted in silence. The Council never ventured there. Too many unstable energy fields, too many anomalies that couldn't be explained. But hidden in that chaos was the wreckage of a legendary warship, a ship that once stood against the Council and nearly won. The Valkyrian. Julian's eyes widened. You can't be serious. That ship's been lost for over a century. Elias smirked. Then no one will expect us to find it. Titan's Wrath changed course, burning toward the nebula at full speed. The journey would be dangerous. Ion storms, gravitational distortions, and the constant risk of running into another enemy patrol. But if they could recover even a fragment of Valkyrian's technology, they might just have a fighting chance. As the ship approached the nebula's swirling blue mist, the view outside the command deck changed. The stars faded behind thick clouds of cosmic dust, and eerie lightning crackled through the darkness. The deeper they went, the more the ship's systems flickered. Julian watched as the navigation console struggled to maintain stability. We're flying blind in here, Dr. Hayes muttered over the comms. This region is a nightmare. If the reactor destabilizes in this mess, we won't even leave a trace. Elias kept his focus ahead. Stay sharp. Valkyrian is here somewhere. The ship pushed forward, its lights barely cutting through the dense fog of space dust. Then, without warning, alarms blared. Unidentified object detected, directly ahead. Titan's Wrath lurched to a halt as the object came into view. A massive silhouette, barely visible in the darkness, loomed before them. Wreckage floated in all directions, but at the center of the chaos was an ancient warship, half buried in the nebula's mist. Julian whispered, "We found it." The Valkyrian was a ruin. Its once mighty hull was shattered in places, massive gashes carved by battles long forgotten. But even in its broken state, the ship radiated power. Dr. Hayes analyzed the scans. Its core is still intact. Whatever power source it used is still active. Barely. Elias turned to the crew. Get a boarding team ready. We're going in. Within minutes, a small strike team assembled at the airlock. They moved carefully, navigating through the swirling debris field. As their shuttle docked with the Valkyrian, the old warship's hull groaned, as if awakening from a long slumber. Inside, the corridors were silent. Dust floated in zero gravity, disturbed only by their movements. The lights flickered dimly, ancient systems struggling to reactivate. Julian whispered, "Feels like a tomb." Elias moved forward. "Then let's bring it back to life." Dr. Hayes accessed the ship's ancient mainframe, her fingers flying over the control panel. "There's something here." data logs, old schematics. And she stopped, her breath catching. Elias leaned over. "What is it?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "The ship isn't dead." Before Elias could respond, the corridor lights surged to life, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the hall. Something inside the Valkyrian was waking up, and they had no idea if it was friend or foe. The moment the lights flickered to life, a deep hum vibrated through the ship's structure, rattling the floor beneath their boots. Dust swirled in the low gravity as ancient machinery creaked back to life, systems long dormant now flickering with renewed energy. The air inside the Valkyrian was stale, heavy with the scent of burned circuits in decay. But something else lingered, a presence. Elias Voss tightened his grip on his plasma rifle, his eyes scanning the dimly lit corridors. The ship was waking up, but was it under their control? Or something else's? Julian Carter's voice was tense. This ship was dead. It shouldn't be moving. Dr. Lillian Hayes worked furiously at the control panel, her fingers flying over the ancient interface. The core reactor is still functional, but something is interfering with it. It's as if it's waiting for a command. Elias frowned. "Can you access the main systems?" She hesitated before nodding. "Maybe. But this ship was built with technology far beyond anything we've ever seen. It'll take time." Time they didn't have. A sudden noise echoed through the hallway ahead. A metallic groan followed by a rhythmic clicking sound. Elias motioned for silence, and the team froze. Julian whispered, "That doesn't sound like an empty ship." Elias moved forward cautiously, leading the team through the dimly lit corridor. The walls bore the scars of past battles, scorch marks, ruptured panels, and signs of explosive damage. This ship had seen war, and it had lost. But why had it remained intact for so long? They reached a large blast door, partially open, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. The command bridge. Elias pushed through first, his rifle raised. The bridge was vast, built for a crew much larger than theirs. The central command chair sat untouched, surrounded by an array of dead screens. Massive observation windows overlooked the nebula, the swirling cosmic dust casting eerie shadows inside. Then Elias saw them. Bodies, scattered across the floor, floating in the low gravity, were the remains of the Valkyrian's original crew, or what was left of them. Skeletal figures in decayed uniforms, their hollow eye sockets staring into nothing. Some were still strapped into their stations. Others lay crumpled against walls, as if they had been thrown by an explosion. Julian muttered, "They never made it out." Dr. Hayes knelt beside one of the bodies, her scanner beeping softly. No signs of an external breach. They didn't die from enemy fire. Elias' stomach tightened. Then what killed them? The answer came seconds later. A new sound, deeper and heavier, rumbled through the bridge. A mechanical voice, garbled, distorted, spoke through the ship's speakers. Unauthorized presence detected. The air around them suddenly felt heavier, the pressure shifting as if something unseen had just awakened. Julian backed up. "That's not good." Dr. Hayes' eyes widened as she read her display. The ship's defense systems are still operational. Before Elias could react, the floor panels retracted, revealing hidden compartments. Automated turrets, ancient but still functional, emerged from the walls. The barrels hummed with power, locking onto the human intruders. Intruders identified, engaging elimination protocol. The turrets fired. Elias dove for cover as plasma bolts ripped through the air, scorching the metal walls. The team scrambled, ducking behind ruined consoles and debris. Julian shouted, "We need to shut those things down." Dr. Hayes frantically typed on her interface, "I'm trying. The system is in lockdown. Whoever programmed this ship didn't want anyone taking control." Elias peeked over his cover, his mind racing. They couldn't destroy the turrets. The Valkyrian was too valuable to risk damage, but they had to disable them somehow. Then he saw it. a power conduit running along the ceiling, exposed by years of decay. He aimed his rifle, took a breath, and fired. The shot struck the conduit, sending a surge of energy through the ship's systems. The lights flickered violently, and the turrets stuttered. One by one, they powered down, their barrels lowering as if the ship itself had been stunned. Elias exhaled. That was close. Dr. Hayes wiped sweat from her forehead. I managed to override some of the security. The ship won't shoot us again, but I don't know what else it's hiding. Julian stood up, his pulse still racing. We need to figure out who, or what, is controlling this thing. Elias turned toward the main command console. It was ancient, covered in symbols they barely understood, but it still functioned. He stepped forward, placing his hands on the cold metal. The moment his fingers touched the console, the ship responded. The screen flared to life with streams of alien text, rapidly shifting into something readable. A single phrase appeared in bold red letters. Command QOD required. Dr. Hayes' breath caught. It's asking for an authorization code, like it's waiting for its captain. Julian frowned. But the crew is dead. How is this thing still running? Elias stared at the console, feeling an eerie presence in the ship. The Valkyrian wasn't just a relic. It was alive in a way they didn't understand. Then, without warning, the screen changed again. A new phrase appeared. TOD accepted. Elias' pulse pounded. I didn't enter anything. The ship's lights shifted from flickering blue to a deep, ominous red. The hum beneath their feet grew stronger, almost like a heartbeat. The speakers crackled. And then, for the first time in a century, the Valkyrian spoke. Command recognized. Humanity's warship reactivated. Outside, the nebula trembled as the Valkyrian's engines roared to life. The lost warship had awakened, and it was ready for battle. The Valkyrian trembled as its ancient systems roared to life. A deep hum vibrated through the floors, and distant machinery groaned as if stretching after a long slumber. The entire ship was waking up, and Elias Voss felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This warship had once defied the Galactic Council, and now, after a century of silence, it was ready to fight again. Dr. Lillian Hayes' hands flew over the interface, her eyes darting across the rapidly shifting data. This is insane. The ship is responding as if it recognizes you, Elias. Julian Carter stared at the main console, where the words "Command recognized" still glowed ominously. Yeah, and I don't like that. We never entered a code. Elias ignored the tension in their voices. They didn't have time to question it. The ship was online, and that meant they had a chance. Lillian, can you access the weapon systems? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded. They're partially functional, but we're missing key power conduits. This ship was designed for a crew of thousands. Right now, we're barely scratching the surface of what it can do. Julian crossed his arms. That's assuming we even get the chance to fight. The ship's speakers crackled, and the mechanical voice of the Valkyrian filled the bridge. Incoming enemy fleet detected. Elias' stomach twisted. How many? A new display flickered to life, revealing the approaching threat. The Galactic Council had arrived. Not one, not two, but an entire armada. Warships, carriers, and destroyers, their hulls gleaming under the nebula's eerie light. The Exilari flagship led the fleet, its massive structure dwarfing everything around it. The Council was not here to negotiate. They had seen the defiance of humanity, and they had come to end it. Julian swore under his breath. That's enough firepower to wipe out a planet. Dr. Hayes' voice was tight. We can't fight them like this. We're not ready. Elias clenched his fists. Then we get ready. Now. The Valkyrian's AI flickered again. Weapons system initializing. A deep rumble shook the ship as hidden panels retracted, revealing rows of ancient weaponry, plasma cannons, railguns, missile silos that had not fired in 100 years. The ship was responding, adapting, preparing for war. Elias grinned. Looks like the old girl still has some fight in her. Julian wasn't convinced. This thing is barely holding together. One good hit, and we're dead. Dr. Hayes scanned the power readings. Not necessarily. There's something else here. A secondary power core buried deep in the ship's structure. If we can activate it, we might have full control. Elias didn't hesitate. Do it. Hayes accessed the control systems, her fingers flying across the keys. The ship rumbled, its core reactors surging with new energy. Lights flared across the bridge, and suddenly, the ship's voice changed. Final combat mode. Engaged. The Valkyrian was no longer just waking up. It was preparing for total war. Outside, the enemy fleet moved into formation. A voice crackled over the comms. Cold, calculating, filled with superiority. Human vessel. You are in violation of Galactic Council law. Surrender immediately, and we will make your deaths quick. Elias smirked. Yeah. I've got a counteroffer. He turned to Julian. Fire everything. The Valkyrian answered before Julian could. A blinding beam of plasma tore through the nebula, slicing through the lead auxiliary battleship like it was made of paper. Explosions rippled across the enemy fleet as the ancient warship unleashed its fury. Railguns fired, missiles streaked through space, and the very air around them seemed to hum with the energy of war. The enemy wasn't prepared. They had come expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had woken a sleeping giant. Julian whooped. That's what I'm talking about. Dr. Hayes watched the power reading spike. The Valkyrian is pushing past its limits. If we don't stabilize the core, we'll burn out. Elias' gaze was locked on the enemy flagship. The auxiliary commander was no fool. The moment he realized the battle was turning, he made the call. The flagship powered up its main cannon, an energy weapon powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Elias knew they had seconds. He slammed a fist on the console. Redirect all remaining power to shields. The ship's voice responded. Power reallocation. Complete. The enemy flagship fired. A blinding explosion engulfed the Valkyrian, shaking the ship to its core. Metal groaned, alarms blared, and for a moment, it felt like everything was collapsing. But when the light cleared, they were still alive. Julian coughed. That should have killed us. Dr. Hayes stared at the readings in shock. The ship absorbed the blast. I don't know how, but Elias didn't wait for an explanation. The enemy flagship was recharging. They had one shot. He turned to Julian. Aim for their core. Julian grinned, with pleasure. The Valkyrian fired its final shot. A single railgun round, enhanced by the last of the ship's energy, ripped through space and struck the enemy flagship dead center. The explosion was instant, a massive fireball that sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The auxiliary fleet hesitated. Their leader was gone. Their strongest ship destroyed. Then, one by one, they began to retreat. Elias exhaled, his hands trembling. It was over. Julian let out a breathless laugh. We actually won. Dr. Hayes slumped in relief. For now, the Valkyrian's systems flickered. The battle had pushed it beyond its limits. It would need repairs, and fast. But they had done the impossible. Humanity had been banned. They had been hunted, exiled, and left to die. But they had answered with a warship. And now, the galaxy knew. Humanity would not be erased.